you don't really know who you are or what you are until you put a really big challenge in front of you.
Fear is an asset and ally here to help you be magnificent.
This crazy, silly, stupid idea to run across the Sahara Desert.
You did make it this time, but you said if you didn't make it, you would try again and again.
Everybody's connected to nature, connected to music, to their families, and now we're going to build a world that doesn't have racism and war and starving kids.
I kept telling myself, run at it, and just keep smiling.
Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to The Extra Mile. It is a beautiful sunny morning in New York City. But I am not in New York City for long today because later today I am shipping up to Boston, as they say. This weekend is one of my favorite weekends of the year, the Boston Marathon. And I'm heading up there to share in the spirit of the day and to watch and to just feel all the energy. And I'm going to see our partners at Aftershocks up there. I'm going to see a lot of charity milers up there, and I am just so excited. And so for this weekend, I am re-releasing one of my favorite interviews that I ever recorded. It's an interview that I recorded 2 years ago over Boston Marathon weekend with Bob Babbitt, who is an Ironman legend. He raced in the third Ironman. He's raced in several others since then, but he's really one of the people who's foundational to the success of the sport, to all endurance sports. He's a founder of Competitor Magazine, founder of the Challenge Athletes Foundation, and he is a master storyteller, as you will get to hear in this episode. And I'm re-releasing it now because I don't know how, but it somehow got deleted from our podcast server, and I was going to try to listen to it the other day, and it wasn't there. So I want to re-release it here because you'll also get to feel a lot of what that Boston Marathon weekend is like. We recorded it in and around Boylston Street, the finish line of the Boston Marathon, and I think that you'll really get to feel the energy and feel Bob's energy as well. So before we jump into it, I want to give a huge shout out to our partners at Aftershocks. Like I said, I'm going to be seeing them up in Boston, and they've got a lot of cool stuff going on, one of which is their new OptiShock sunglasses, which are performance sunglasses that have their bone conduction audio in them that wraps around the back of your ear cartilage so that you can listen to your music, your podcasts like this podcast, and still hear everything that's going on around you, which is really important for safety. And that's all built into their really cool looking performance sunglasses. These are great for anybody who wants to listen to music while they bike, ski, hike, run, do triathlon, golf. They're awesome. And they've given us a very special secret perk on their Indiegogo presale for 50% off. By the way, their Indiegogo presale is 900% oversold already. They're crushing it. So you'll want to check that out. And if you want the 50% off, go to charitymiles.org/OptiShocks, OptiShokz. They're awesome. Check them out. Huge shout out to Aftershocks. We love working with them. They're a great partner. And now without any further ado, turn up your volume, turn on your Charity Miles, and come along for the walk or the run with me and Bob Babbitt in Boston, Massachusetts. Every mile matters. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Extra Mile. It is a beautiful afternoon here in Boston, Massachusetts. We are on Boylston Street, April 15th, probably 200 meters, 300 meters from the finish line of the Boston Marathon. And it is electric here. And I have the honor, the distinct honor, of walking with a legend today, Bob Babbitt. Bob Babbitt used to be a PE teacher.
That is correct. Wow.
And what year did you do your first Ironman, Bob?
First Ironman I did was the third ever Ironman, 1980. And there was 78. In 78 was the first Ironman. They had 15 starters and 12 finishers. 79 had 15 starters and 12 finishers. And my roommate at the time, when we read the article in Sports Illustrated in 1979, Ned Overend went on to become world mountain bike champion, but mountain bikes hadn't been invented yet. So he was working at San Diego Suzuki, and I was a school teacher running a PE program at a little private school. And we read about this event and decided, we should try to figure this out.
Naturally.
Of course. So, of course, you couldn't go online and find out anything. There was no information anywhere. So we tracked down the guy who won the event, Tom Warren, who lived in San Diego. Tommy owned a little tavern called Tug's Tavern that we had done Tommy's swim, run, swim that he had done every year. And So I called Tom up on the phone and asked him about this Ironman thing. And he said, well, Babbitt, why don't you come meet me in my office and I'll tell you about that thing. I go, where's your office? Well, it's on the west side of the street, just south of Crystal Pier here in Pacific Beach. Okay. So we go down there. There's no buildings there. There's a parking lot along the ocean with a motorhome with a bike on the back and a paddleboard on top and running shoes tied around the side view mirror. And I put my head inside this motorhome, and there's Tom Warren. He's like, welcome to my office, Babbitt. And he's got a roll of dimes in the console, and there's a payphone behind him. And he would go down, park there every day, and he would make his business calls, order beer, order tortillas, whatever he'd order. And then he'd run 5 miles each morning. And he'd ride his bike up to Oceanside and back, which was like 50 miles or so, and then he'd paddle out in the ocean. And that's what he did. That's basically, he was living the triathlon lifestyle. And the things he was doing on a regular basis basically became a sport. So we went back behind where he was parked, and there was a bar there. And most of the time you were with Tommy, you'd be in a bar. And so we're in this bar. And we're asking him, so Mr. Warren, how do you enter this race, this Ironman thing? How do you find out about it? And as we're asking him questions and he's giving us his answers, he's got a magic marker and he's making a mark on his arm every time we ask him questions. And we're thinking, well, this is our mentor. So he's the one who's going to show us how to do this Ironman thing. We don't really want to bring too much attention to this sort of weird thing that he's doing with the magic marker. But
he's just drawing marks on his arm.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm like, so Mr. Warren, sir, what's the deal with the magic marker? He goes, well, I have a little bit of a drinking issue, so I make a mark on my arm until I get to my sleeve, and then I go home. Okay. So, again, that's the guy who's mentoring us. And we go to his house, and he's got a bike on a trainer in the sauna. And he
Carbon
does,
fiber, right?
Yeah. Does 5-hour bike rides in the sauna at 120 degrees, and that's how he was training for Ironman. So, anyways, we find out how to sign up for the thing and send our $25 checks in. And we're in the race. I was number 3 because I was the third one to send my check in, not because I was seated in any way, shape, or form. But we had to get bikes, and so we went to a police auction. Mine had the whole back end was charred, and thing had been in a fire. $75. We get the bike, and we started training, and I had the fuzzy raccoon seat cover and the foam grips, and we had no idea really how the thing worked. And so we, being rock climbers, the only thing we owned.
I did not know.
Yeah, we were rock climbers out of Mexico. That's where I met Ned. And so the only helmets we owned. This way. Only helmets we owned were rock climbing helmets, which had no holes in them. So when we go for a bike ride, you felt like your head was going to explode. So our thought was, I don't think you can do this thing in one day. So I got pannier, sleeping bag, and tent, put them on the bike, because I figured that you'd swim 2.4 and ride 56 day 1, and then you'd camp out and ride 56 and do the marathon day 2, which made a lot of sense. So anyways, we get over there and end up the day before the race. The race director calls, there's 108 of us now, because the article in Sports Illustrated led to, the event went from 15 starters to 108 starters. So the race director calls all of us together the day before the race, and the waves are pounding up against the building where the meeting is. Big storms over in Oahu. And Ned and I did all of our training in a 120 lengths a mile pool. And we're thinking, we're going to die.
You've never done an open water swim?
We've done open water swim, but not with 10-foot wave. We're going to die. So
this was before it was in the bay.
Well, so the race director gets up and goes, listen, we have an opportunity. ABC is here to shoot cliff diving on Sunday, and they want to shoot the Ironman tomorrow. But if we have to move the swim, which they had to do the year before, because of the Ala Moana, because of the storms, and move it a day, he'd lose ABC. So he goes, listen, to make sure I don't lose ABC, we're going to hold the event tomorrow. And we're going to move it to Alamoana Channel, which Ned and I were pretty excited about. But Dave Scott and all the Navy SEALs were like, what a pussy event. You can't move the Ironman. It has to be Waikiki rough water swim. But they did, which is the only reason that I'm speaking now, because we would have died. There's no question about it.
There would have been no Bob Babbitt.
No, there would have been no Bob Babbitt. So anyways, we get down there, and we were going to swim 4 lengths in this Alamoana Channel. And I swim down, and on my way back, and I'm staying as shallow as I can, I almost run right into this guy his name is John Huckabee. His claim to fame is he ran the Athens Marathon 3 times in one day. Back to back to back. The only problem was 59-year-old John Huckabee, known as the Incredible Huck, had never swum a stroke in his life. Signed up for this event and couldn't swim at all. So he was walking the entire swim. Walking and moving his arms like he's swimming. Right? He's the only guy in the history of Ironman to get blisters on his feet during the swim portion of a race. And so I ended up getting out of water and had to wait for a family. There was a guy and his kid were in the shower. Because, you're just using the regular recreational shower that's there. Again, no roads are blocked off, nothing. My crew, I was one of the kids I taught at school in San Diego, her dad lived in Hawaii. So he volunteered his time to bring his little Fiat convertible and be my crew. So I gave him all of my nutrition. My nutrition was Hawaiian sweetbread and Gatorade, because we don't know what to eat. Nobody knew what to train or any of that type of stuff back then. So we get the Hawaiian bread and Gatorade, and I've got my long socks on and my regular shorts with a belt, beige shorts and a belt, long sleeve shirt with a pocket sewn in the back for my Hawaiian sweetbread, and get out of the water. And next thing you know, I'm riding my bike. I also had a Radio Shack radio on the handlebars, so I'm tuning in music as I'm riding through Waikiki, and I'm thinking this is the coolest thing ever.
Radio Shack.
Yeah, oh yeah. So I'm riding along, and I'm about in Waikiki, and then through Waikiki, we get to about mile 25, and there's my crew on the side of the road, and it looks like they're going to do a handoff, like the Tour de France. And I'm thinking, this is the coolest thing ever. Well, brown bag, Big Mac fries, and a Coke, mile 25.
I thought this was just legend. This is true.
Oh, this is true. And mile 80 was a root beer snow cone. And then when we finished the bike ride, you come in, and I hear this tinkling of music, and there's a bamboo mat laid out. And my crew's like, how about a massage? And I'm like, that would feel really good. 112 miles is a long way to go on the bike. So I got about a 45-minute massage between the bike and the run. Just sort of laid there. It's like, oh, this feels great. Then they had a rule back then that if you lost 5% of your body weight, they yanked you out of the race. So they had scales at different parts of the course. So I start the run, they weigh me, and meanwhile I'm eating Hawaiian sweetbread and I'm drinking Gatorade. And as I get to about mile 4 and we have to get on a scale again, I can hear the guy in the walkie-talkie, can you give me that again? He's gained 4 pounds. And then we get out, and Ned, meanwhile, his girlfriend, who turned out to be his wife eventually, Pam, was crewing for him that day. And she lost him early on in the bike, and the next time she found him at mile 90, he was drinking from sprinklers on the side of the road.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So anyways, now I'm running along, and my crew is behind me, and I'm coming up Diamond Head, and it's, dark out, and there are little Fiat convertibles lighting the road in front of me, and now we're dropping down into Kapiolani Park, and I'm thinking, this is the coolest thing. I had no idea I could do this. I thought I was going to do this in 2 days. Nah, I wouldn't call it we did training. I had no idea that I could do this. I sort of surprised myself. But meanwhile, I started thinking, they got to have a band to finish. They got to have cheerleaders. It's going to be big festivity. I mean, we're completing this thing called the Ironman Triathlon. This is a big accomplishment. I come into the park, and there's a chalk line, there's a light bulb, and there's a voice in the darkness. It's like, hey, you. I'm like, yeah? You in the race? Yeah. You're done. That was it. There was one guy doing one-arm push-ups. No Mike Riley telling me an Ironman. You're
Bob Babbitt.
You are an idiot.
You are.
Yeah, you are an idiot for being out here in the park, and there's nobody else here. So
how long did it take you?
I think it was like 14 something or other.
Man.
Yeah.
With a 45-minute massage.
Yeah, but what I tell people all the time when people say, "What was your best race ever in Hawaii?" Well, I was 56th in Kona. Wow, you're top 50. Yeah. I don't tell them there's 108. That part's immaterial. It doesn't matter. So, yeah. So anyway,
56 in the world, man.
Exactly. So as I'm sitting there in the park, it's just like I felt, you have these moments, these aha moments in life, and I just felt like somebody just gave me this business card that told me that I could do anything, that I could change my perception of me, and that I felt. Right then, even though there were 108 of us, I felt this sport is special. This sport changes lives. This sport just changed my life. So I came home, and before you know it, I leave teaching, convince the art teacher to become a photographer. She becomes Lois Schwartz, who would be one of the greatest sports photographers, took the Iron War shot, one of the greatest sports photographers of all time. And Lois and I end up starting Competitor Magazine. And start covering running, triathlon, cycling, mountain biking, and grow that to 11 editions of the magazine around the country. And then we also had a series called the Muddy Buddy Ride and Run series, then Competitor Radio and Competitor Awards. And we sold to a private equity firm in 2008. They wanted our brand, our little brand called Competitor. They really liked what it represented. And at the same time, they bought all the rock and roll marathons. And Elite Racing, which owned the Rock and Roll, and Triathlete Magazine, and Inside Communications, which owned Velo News. So the whole idea was a competitor group, which basically started with this little dinky sport of triathlon. And when we first started Competitor, Lois and I were in 200 square feet for $200 a month underneath 20,000 pounds of bike racks. We didn't know that 95% of all magazines go out of business in the first year. And we didn't pay ourselves for the first year and a half. We actually, some friends, when nobody was looking to partner with us on a magazine, some friends gave us $17,000 and said, go start your magazine. And that was in May of 87. And in June, we came out with the first edition of Competitor. We had no idea what we were doing. All we knew was we loved the sport, we loved the industry, and we wanted to grow it. And I always tell a funny story. So early on, I'm in a race, handing out Competitor. Standing next to me is a guy named Brian Maxwell, who created Power Bar, handing out his bars. And next to him is a guy named Phil Tauber, who started Kashi. And so, Phil's company sold for $75 million. And Brian Maxwell's Power Bar company sold for over $400 million. And just, it shows you what started as a passion. And Brian needed something, an energy bar, to help him run marathons. And I started this magazine because I believed in our endurance, in the world of endurance. And Phil had his cereal, which became, hot cereal, cold cereal, Kashi bars. So our whole world, we did something because we wanted to, and it became a real business, which surprised the crap out of all of us.
Amazing. So we're just going to turn around. Did we lose your videographer?
That's okay.
Okay, sorry. I think I made a wrong turn. We're heading back.
Not a problem.
In the right direction now. I apologize about that.
Not a problem. So anyways, when we left teaching and decided to work for a magazine called Running and Triathlon News, well, it's called Running News. Mike Plant ran this thing called Running News and gave me an opportunity to be his LA editor and Lois to be the LA photographer. We just started creating things. So for Mike, I created the Old Fart of the Month character and the old Fart of the Month, the Running Wino, Reverend Campagnolo, Minister of Triathlon. It was just all sorts of silly stuff. And the cool part was people were responding to it. They liked it or they hated it, but they wrote. And eventually, Mike saw the light, and Running News became Running and Triathlon News. And then that eventually, when that went out of business, and we launched Competitor, we built that on, the Ironman was really our base, right? Because we were a free magazine. This is an industry a time when those were considered a penny save or a throwaway. And because of Ironman, we were able to Gatorade put us on their their advertising list. And even though their agency was like, this is a free giveaway, you don't want them on your list of advertisers. They're like, yes, this is a core magazine to that industry, and we're the title sponsor. It's a Gatorade Ironman. We feel that magazine is important. Well, that helped us with every other national client. And eventually that led to us selling in 2008. And then again, I stayed on board until 2012 when we sold again.
Amazing.
And then left in 2014 to do my own, do Babbittville.com, the Babbittville podcast, Breakfast with Bob from Kona and Boston and other places around the world. And it's been a blast. But probably the one thread that runs through all of that was 24 years ago we started our Challenged Athletes Foundation.
Right.
And that came about, again, organically. A guy named Jim McLaren was a 300-pound football player at Yale. And in 1985, Jimmy was taking acting classes in New York. And on his motorcycle going to class, he gets hit by a New York City bus, thrown 90 feet in the air, dead on arrival, loses his lower left leg from the accident, and comes back to run a 3:16 marathon as a lower leg amputee on a 3:16 on a walking leg. On a walking leg, not a high-tech prosthetic.
Not one of these kind of bows or...
Nope. And then he goes 10:42 in Kona, top 20% of everybody in the race. So at that point, that's when I started covering Jimmy through Competitor. And he was very well known. He was the one-legged triathlete, sponsored by Budweiser and Profile by Design and a number of other companies. So in 93, Jimmy was racing up in Mission Viejo in Orange County, California, and a van went through a closed intersection, hit the back of his bike, propelled him headfirst into a pole. And a guy who was already an amputee became a quadriplegic. And myself, Rick Kozlowski, who was a local race director in San Diego, and we had done Ironman together in 1980, and Jeffrey Esikow, who worked with the Tinley Company, clothing company, the three of us got together to put on a little triathlon for Jimmy. The whole idea was we knew triathlon, and we felt that we could raise $25K, and the goal was raise $25K and buy Jimmy a van that he could drive with his hands. I had covered a lot of paralyzed athletes through a Competitor, and the one thing I'd hear when I'd ask, what's the worst part about being paralyzed? The worst part was always, I'm 30 years old, here come mom and dad back in my life, no sense of self, no sense of dependence.
Yeah.
So our goal was, we buy Jimmy this hand-controlled van, gives him that independence. And so that was our goal. We put on this little triathlon at La Jolla Cove, and the goal was 25. We raised 49 and thought our job was done. Well, we didn't realize our job was just beginning because we had a number of folks come up to us and a number of amputee gals who came up to us and said, do you know Jimmy's our hero, and he's the one who got us into endurance. But did you also know that if you have any type of injury, that your health insurance will cover a walking around leg or an everyday chair, anything that's basically functional. But anything to do with sport is considered a luxury item. It's not covered. And that's when we got our 501(c), and that's when we decided if anybody needs a piece of equipment, training expenses, or travel expenses to stay in the game of life through sport, that the Challenged Athletes Foundation will be there for them. So since then, 24 years, we've raised over $80 million. We've sent out over 14,000 grants. Right now, we're in the midst of sending out 2,000 grants totaling $3 million. And it's, to me, that's the best thing ever. When we were down in Rio this summer for the Paralympics, and I had this woman, Deborah Jackson, came up to me, and she goes, Bob, you probably don't remember, but 8 years ago when my son Desmond was 8, CAF gave him a running leg. Tomorrow night, he's running in the finals at the 200 meters here in Rio.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, that's why we do what we do. Right?
Wow.
That changed. Think about his perception of himself. Think about his confidence level. Think about how sport allows him to feel great, not just about himself as an athlete, but about he can do anything. There's nothing that can stop him. And that, to me, has been the real gift of the Challenged Athletes Foundation. It changes perceptions and it changes lives.
The Challenged Athletes Foundation is phenomenal. It's one of the organizations that I've always looked up to ever since I've gotten into running and triathlon. And just whenever I go to these races and I see people from the Challenge Athletes Foundation or Achilles International, who I've worked with for a number of years now. It just, like you said, it tells a story that not only changes the lives of the people participating in it, but anybody else who witnesses that.
Yes. Now, the whole deal is when people ask about, or a lot of times I'll speak to groups and they'll talk about how, gosh, what can I do? I'm one person. Can I really make an impact? I'm like, yeah, you can. I mean, look at the impact Jimmy McLaren made on the world. Yep. And so many of our athletes, Rudy Garcia-Tolson is a double above knee amputee who, ended up on Oprah, ended up racing with Robin Williams at our San Diego Triathlon Challenge 11 times. And it's watching what our athletes accomplish, and now seeing someone like a Scout Bassett, who's a single above knee amputee, signing a global deal with Nike. And athletes who were thought of as lesser than are now looked at as, if I've got 5 athletes and one is missing a leg, that one's a little more noticeable than the one who's not missing a leg. So what was considered lesser than is now considered more than, which we love.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I've worked with different athletes with different abilities. Mm-hmm. I've been a guide for wheelchair athletes and for blind athletes. I did actually Ironman New York City with a blind triathlete.
Right.
And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I actually trained to do Ironman Florida with him, and then I was in an accident a few weeks before the race. Couldn't do that with him. But when we did New York City together, his name is Jack Chen, Jack Chen. He's completely blind. And that was a really hard day for me. The heat is my nemesis. It was really hot. Uh-huh. And when it came time for the run, I was cooked. And I could hardly run. And Jack put his hand on my shoulder like this. And even though he's blind, I swear to God, he guided me. See? It was unbelievable. Yep. And I couldn't have finished the race without him. And they say that, challenge athletes or disabled athletes, or they call it the physically challenged division. I think everyone in the Ironman is physically challenged. It's a physically challenged race. It's just a different challenge, and they bring something unique and special to it, and it's a different story that can inspire us in so many different ways. And
one of the stories, a number of years ago, Robin Williams had been a huge supporter of CAF. When he passed away, we were asked to go on a number of TV shows to talk about Robin, and I went on with Rudy, who again had been, teammates with Robin on Team Braveheart. It's our San Diego Triathlon Challenge 11 times. And the anchor asked Rudy, said, Rudy, did you have a sense of what Robin was dealing with? And Rudy, pretty perceptive for a 25-year-old, he goes, what's great about what I'm dealing with, it's pretty visible. It's pretty obvious that I'm missing both legs above the knee. The problem for what Robin was dealing with, nobody knew. Nobody could see that. And I thought that was incredibly perceptive for a young man to realize that we all do have challenges. Some, if it's depression or PTSD or whatever it happens to be, and Rudy feels that it's a positive that his are pretty obvious, so people know what he's dealing with. So that's a way you can look at a lot of things in life as a negative, or you can look at them as an opportunity. And that's most of our athletes. Jamie Whitmore was a top Xterra off-road triathlete, won 37 Xterra titles in her career, won Maui, the World Championship once, won the National Championship 6 times. Well, all of a sudden, she's having pain in the back of her leg. The doctors are telling her, oh, you must just have a low pain threshold. Yeah, right. Someone who does Xterra up at altitude, that's the most brutal stuff in the world. So ends up getting diagnosis that there's a tumor wrapped around her sciatic nerve. So what happens is they do the operation, and she's told there's a chance she probably will never run again because she'll end up with drop foot from the operation, which is exactly what happened. And so she ends up with drop foot. She can't run again. So I called her husband, Courtney, while they were at the hospital and said, listen, Courtney, the timing might not be right on this, but just want to let you know, I know how competitive Jamie is, and she's going to need something. And there's this thing called the Paralympics, and there's a thing called Paralympic cycling and Paralympic swimming. And if Jamie can't run again, she certainly can ride, and she certainly can swim. So this summer when we were in Rio, Jamie won the silver in the individual pursuit at 3,000, and then she won the gold medal in the road race. And as for a little girl who at the age of 6 was watching the Olympics on television saying, I want that. And then at the age of 41, for that to finally happen, so one door was closed as a professional triathlete, off-road triathlete, and next thing you know, she's winning a Paralympic gold medal and is on the top step of the podium while her anthem is playing and the flag is being raised.
Wow.
So one door closes, another can open up.
Amazing. The stories that you have been witness to, and I just want to, we kind of glossed over this in your history. You started Competitor Magazine and Competitor Radio.
Right.
And I kind of look at you as the custodian of the sport. Like all of the oral history of the sport passes through you. And, you know, a sport like triathlon and like endurance racing is so much about stories, and that's what fires me up and why I love it. And those stories pass through. I've heard all these stories through you. The Iron War, I heard through your voice. You know, Julie Moss, I heard through your voice. I listened to Competitor Radio for years, and all the interviews that you did and all the stories I heard through your voice. And, you know, it's not just the stories that we hear from you, but the stories that we tell ourselves, and that each of the racers that you've had the honor and the privilege of meeting have told to themselves, that then they have relayed through you. It's just incredible. So it's a tremendous honor for me to be walking with you today and to hear some of the stories, like the story of your first Ironman. I mean, that is epic. What was the story that you were writing for yourself in that race? Like,
well, again, we were sort of an adventure because we really didn't know what this thing was. I mean, we had read the article in Sports Illustrated, but it was really an article about Tom Warren and his bar and doing the event. But until you're inside it and actually doing it, you don't really know what the challenges are and what the payoff is. You don't see the payoffs on the pages of the magazine. You feel them when you come across that finish line and you understand how you're changed. That's the value of sport. That's the value of endurance.
And when you see that in the athletes that you work with, I guess, both with the Challenge Athletes Foundation and not, there are differences in each person's story.
Yeah, every story is so unique.
And what are some of the common threads, or maybe what are some of the most interesting, unique parts of those stories?
Well, what I love is when stories start at point A and you don't know where they're going, and all of a sudden,
kind of like this walk.
Sort of like this walk, but I'll bore you with one more. That Emmanuel, his name was Emmanuel Afoso Yeboah, from a country called Ghana, which I thought was near Cleveland. I had no idea where the hell Ghana was, but so Emmanuel was born in Ghana, and one of 2 million disabled people in Ghana, of a country with 20 million people. So 10% of the population is disabled. And I always like to tell this story because when people do feel that, how do you make an impact? How do you change the world? How can one person do anything? So here's a kid. His dad deserts the family because he's missing his tibia. So he's got a fibula coming out the back of his knee with a foot on the end. And his dad deserts the family because there's a stigma to having a child with a disability. And you're considered a second-class citizen. So at that point, Mom is told, you really should abandon your child in the jungle because he's never going to amount to anything. She refuses to do that and actually carries Emmanuel to school each day. And he's the only disabled kid in school. So at the age of 13, his mom becomes ill, and he decides he's going to quit school and shine shoes for a couple dollars a day to support the family. When he turns 18, Mom passes away. Now he wants to do something to honor her life. Through a missionary, he goes out, they go online and find Challenge Athletes Foundation and sent us a typewritten grant asking for a bicycle. Here's a guy who just lost his mom and he wants a bicycle. He wants to ride across Ghana on a bicycle to show other people with disabilities that there is no limits to what you can accomplish. So we get this grant request, again, from Ghana, typewritten, thinking...
Sorry, the wind is kicking up a little bit here.
And we're thinking that. How do we say it?
What could you possibly be thinking?
What's he going to do about it? Well, what we thought was, it turned out his birthday was the same as mine. It was Cinco de Mayo. Wow. And we're like, okay, we'll send him a bike, and we'll never hear from him again.
Yep. Is your hotel close to here? Should we turn it? Did we miss it?
No, this way.
Got it.
So anyways, we decided to send him a bike. Figure we'll never hear from the kid. Mm-hmm. We sent him a bike. He rides 600 kilometers on one leg on a mountain bike across Ghana. Media are running after him. People are running after him like he's Forrest Gump. It's touched a nerve. Someone with a disability accomplishing something as an athlete had never happened before in Ghana. So we decided to bring him to San Diego for a San Diego Triathlon Challenge, just to get a sense of what we do.
Hold on just 1 second here, folks. We're going to try to get out of this wind. Maybe we'll just sit here for a moment.
Stop for a second. So anyways, Emmanuel, we decided to bring him in to San Diego. He's never been out of Ghana. He's never been on a plane. He has $3 in his pocket when he gets to San Diego. And he does our 56-mile bike ride in 7 hours on one leg on a mountain bike. And I say to him afterwards, so Emmanuel, what'd you think of the bike ride? He goes, Bob, I did not know San Diego was so hilly. And then we sit down with Loma Linda Hospital to ask if this kid is a candidate for prosthetic. And they keep him for a couple days, and they say he is. And so we do a deal that we'll take care of the cost of the leg and the cost of transportation. They'll take care of the operation and a homestay. And again, this is all organic. This isn't like, oh, here's the plan. There was no plan. It's like, let's get this kid to San Diego. Let's get this kid a leg. So then we sent him back, and you mentioned the Ironman earlier. The Ironman, I had helped a woman named Lisa Lax, who produced all the NBC features for the Ironman, plus she produced the features for the Olympic Games. And Lisa had just left television after her and her sister had won 16 Emmy Awards. Her sister produced the Tour de France for CBS.
Wow.
So the two of them had just started Lookalike Productions, they're identical twins. And I called them up, and I said, listen, I don't know what this is. All I know is we're bringing this kid to Loma Linda, and he's going to have a new leg, and I would love to capture what happens next year when he does our bike ride with two legs rather than one. And they go, that's really cool. When's he coming? 3-4 months? I said, no, 5 days. So they put a crew on a plane, fly to Ghana, and start covering this, right? Start shooting this. And Lisa's like, Bob, this footage is amazing. So you needed to capture what the leg looked like before the operation. So then they come, and he has the operation. 6 weeks after the operation, he does a triathlon. 3-mile run with his new prosthetic leg, 12-mile bike ride, and 150-yard swim in a pool. And then gets on a plane to go back to Ghana with his medal on from the triathlon, with his $15,000 leg with a country with a per capita income of $400 a year. And now he's wearing jeans for the first time in his life because he couldn't wear jeans because it wouldn't go over that stump that came out the back of his leg. So he gets off the plane, and it's like a ticker tape parade through Koforidua, his hometown. And again, our crew is following the whole thing. We decided to bring him back for our bike ride the following year with two legs rather than one. He does the bike ride in 4 hours rather than 7 hours with two legs rather than one, receives our Most Inspirational Athlete Award from Robin Williams. Then we sent him up to Nike to receive the Casey Martin Award, which goes to people who are inspirational to the disabled, and comes with a $25,000 grant from Nike. We match it with another $25,000. So now Emmanuel, the guy shining shoes for $2, has $50,000 as our ambassador to Ghana. Then we go to New York so he can have a sit-down with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, who is from Ghana, to talk about the rights of the disabled in his country.
One moment, folks. The wind just kicked in here. Sorry. Just give us 1 minute. Maybe we walk back this way where it wasn't so windy. This is incredible. I'm going to pause it. All right, we're back. Sorry. We were in a wind tunnel.
So Emmanuel receives $25,000 from Nike and $25,000 from the Challenge Athletes Foundation to become our ambassador to Ghana. We fly him to New York to have a sit-down with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, who's from Ghana, to talk about the rights of the disabled in Ghana. Then we sent a rough cut of the film to Oprah, who agrees to narrate what becomes Emmanuel's gift. Then we go to Washington, D.C. for the premiere of the film at the National Geographic Theater. In between, Lisa and Nancy produced a piece for ESPN for their Arthur Ashe Courage Award, which goes to Emmanuel and Jim McLaren, the reason we started the foundation. And Oprah introduces the video piece that's narrated by Kiefer Sutherland at the ESPYs, and then Emmanuel and Jim come out to receive the award from Oprah. So then, watching that is President Bush, who now would like to meet Emmanuel since we're going to be in Washington, D.C. So this is the day of the bombings in London, in the subways in London back in 03, 04. And we're at the Oval Office, we're at the White House to meet President Bush. And we thought the whole thing would be canceled because of the bombings. The president really wanted to meet Emmanuel. So as we're walking into the Oval Office, Rumsfeld and Cheney are sprinting out of the Oval Office. We walk into the Oval Office. It's myself, it's President Bush, my partner from Competitor Magazine, John Smith, and Emmanuel in a little semicircle in the Oval Office. And the president starts out with, Emmanuel, what I really appreciate is you were never looking for government help. You saw an issue with the disabled in your country, and you set out to make a difference. So tell me, when you ride your mountain bike, do you ride SPDs? Do you ride flat pedals? Do you ride cages? Because when I ride with my boys out of Quantico, I ride hard. But how do you use that leg of yours to ride your bike? So Emmanuel's wearing his gown of garb, like a gown, and he reaches down to take his leg off to show the president how it works. And when he reaches down, it makes an audible click, which the Secret Service wasn't very happy about.
Oh, God.
They all start moving towards us, and the next thing you see is President Bush holding this prosthetic leg in his hand. And the guy who set up this meeting for us sends us a note the next day. Hey, guys, just want to let you know, we keep a list of the firsts that happened in the Oval Office. The first person to take their leg off in the Oval Office, Emmanuel Ofosu Yeboah from Ghana. Flash ahead, 2010, President Bush has a mountain bike ride called the Warrior 100, where he invites troops who've lost limbs in battle to ride mountain bikes with him, and myself and a couple of other guys from CAF. So we're down there riding bikes, and we're going to line up to get a photo with President Bush and meet him that night. And I'm like, President Bush, I'm sure you don't remember, we met a number of years ago. I was with this young man from Ghana, and he goes, Emmanuel, how's Emmanuel doing? Is he still riding his mountain bike? Does he still ride cages? What does he ride? And it was so funny. But I told him, I said, President Bush, the cool thing was when we were in the Oval Office with you, up until that point, the president of Ghana had not been really supporting what Emmanuel was doing, trying to get the Disability Act. But after he was in the Oval Office, and the next day, a picture of Emmanuel with the most powerful man in the world was on the front page of the papers in Ghana. The president of Ghana met Emmanuel at the airport when he flew in and said, Emmanuel, I will get your bill presented to Parliament, and 6 months later it was passed. And that was the power of President Bush. And President Bush, I told him that story, and he was like, oh, well, Emmanuel was a very special young man. But when people say to me, how do I make a difference? How do I make a difference in the world? You do it 1 second at a time. You don't think I'm going to get Emmanuel into the Oval Office of the President of the United States and he's going to win the Arthur Ashe. No, you do the right thing. The right thing is he needs a leg. Let's get him a leg, okay? Now he's got a leg. We need to tell his story. Who can help tell that story? You enlist your community to get involved. And we just did this in Secaucus, New Jersey, 2 weeks ago. We're in the midst of sending out $3 million worth of grants to 2,000 athletes for CAF. One of our kids is an 11-year-old Landis Sims from a little town in Indiana. He was born missing one leg above the knee, one below the knee, and both arms at the forearm. So he has no hands. No legs, no hands. And he's a baseball player, right? Baseball player. Good baseball player. He throws and catches with his glove, and when he hits, he's got a little socket on the bat to put one of his stumps in, and he hits great. So anyways, Eric Burns is with the MLB Network. Eric Burns is an 8-time Ironman finisher. Eric Burns is...
I met you with Eric Burns at Ironman, Arizona.
Exactly. So Eric was kind enough to connect me with Mary Beck from the MLB Network, and I said, Mary, we're about to give this Landis a grant. And a buddy of mine, Eric Corcoran, is doing a documentary on this young man. He's shot for National Geographic for 25 years. His trailer on Landis is beautiful. You need to watch it. and we'd love to bring Landis there to give him his grant at MLB. She watches the trailer, she goes back, we love it. Bring away. So this is 2 Tuesdays ago. We go to Secaucus. Landis knows he's getting a tour of the building, and it's Kevin Millar, and it's Mikey Lowell, and it's Eric Burns meeting him, right? And Landis is a Yankee fan, and he's got his Yankee shorts on, and obviously Mikey Lowell is from the Red Sox, and so is Millar from the Red Sox. So Kevin Millar's like, we're going to have problems here, Landis. You know, you, me, I'm Red Sox Nation. You're Yankees. He says, who's your favorite player in the Yankees? He goes, favorite player was Brian McCann, but he got traded to Houston. Huh, you like B-Mac? Let me call B-Mac. he does FaceTime, gets him on the phone. And meanwhile, the MLB is filming all this. Gets Brian McCann on the phone and says, hey, this on FaceTime, goes, this kid Landis here is a big fan of yours, Brian. And he goes, oh, that's what I'm talking about. I love that. And then Millar goes, you need to go deep tonight for Landis. He goes deep, hits a homer that night. That was all over MLB.com, all over their station, that Kevin Millar had convinced B-Mac to hit a home run for Landis Sims.
Amazing.
And so, but that's, again, you don't know where it's going to end up, but similar to Ironman. Who knew what we were going to end up with? We didn't know what that was going to lead to. It was going to lead to competitor, and that was going to lead to selling the company. And when we first started competitor, I had problems handing it out at races. People would be like, oh, I'm not an elite athlete, I can't take that. I'm like, no, you're competing with yourself. You're up at 5 a.m. to come run a 5K. You're a competitor. But I had to change that perception. We also had to change the perception of a free magazine. People thought free meant not worth anything, worthless. And my philosophy was, hey, when I turn on television, ABC, CBS, NBC, they're free. Great programming, big numbers, worth the advertising dollars. That's what I'm doing with competitor. Runner's World's great. Triathlete is great. They have a subscription base. It's a different business model. Doesn't make it better, different. And that's what we did. And over time, we grew our following, we grew our we grew our numbers of readers, we grew our numbers of advertisers, and then we were able to, eventually sell the brand and find a private equity firm that believed in the competitor brand, that the competitor brand was not a negative, that it was a positive. So it's been a pretty cool journey.
And still going. I mean, you are still
just starting, baby.
You are
just still,
with what you're doing now, and you are still the custodian of the sport. And
I got my broom out.
Yeah.
I got my broom and my mop, and got my bucket. And every day I just want to make sure that floor stays shiny. So that's the thing.
We're here at Boston, and before I let you go, what are the stories that you're looking forward to here, or that you think of when you think of the Boston?
Well, a number of them. Obviously, number one for me was the first time I ran Boston was 2003 with Will Ferrell. I say with, even though he ran 3:56 and I ran 4:39 or something. Yep. He kicked my ass. And his thing, the USA Today, was, all I wanted to do was beat Elvis. And I was like, oh, great. I was in my Elvis outfit. Yeah. But Will loved it. And we honored Will at my competitor awards that year. And Will got up and he talked about, when I got into this endurance world, I had no idea I'd be shaving parts of my body that I didn't know I'd be shaving, that I'd be rashing in parts of my body that I didn't know I'd be rashing in. I'll be shaving backstage if any guys want to come back there. And he stopped in the middle of the acceptance speech to take a gel. And he goes, I like chocolate outrage for about 10 miles. Banana gets a little stale after about 12. He was great. And he said something that was very special. He goes, you guys are the greatest athletes in the world, and you don't get the props that you deserve. You don't get the recognition you deserve. And it's true. Our endurance athletes are amazing, and their stories are off the charts. When you think of Boston, when the bombings happened, so many of those, that's what Challenge Athletes Foundation does. We reach out to the hospitals, reach out to the physical therapists. If anybody needs help getting a leg, getting equipment, finding out what's out there, we have that. So one gal named Jamie Marseille was one of our athletes. She lost her legs in '88 to frostbite, came back to star in an Adidas commercial, Long Live Sport, where they just showed her and then all of a sudden zoomed down to see she was missing both legs below the knee. Well, last year, she ran Boston, the first double below knee amputee woman to run Boston. More importantly, the woman who was there to greet her at the finish, Celeste Corcoran, lost both legs, one below and one above the knee, in the bombings here. And when we met Celeste over the phone, we can talk all we want about what life is going to be. But when Jamie talks, she's got street cred. She's lived through it. She was 19 years old when she lost her legs to frostbite. And she did that in 88 when you had a prosthetic leg, you covered it. Not like today where people are proud of it, which is the way it should be. So Celeste and Jamie bonded. It turned out that both of them have a daughter named Sydney. And when Celeste needed to cry, Jamie was there for her. They shared their deepest fears, and could Celeste ever walk again and run again and be the mom that she wanted to be? And Jamie reassured her. So last year when Jamie finished that marathon, who was there at the finish? Celeste Corcoran was there at the finish. Those are the moments that you remember. Those are the moments where sport becomes way more than sport.
That's right. Chris Lieto's got a foundation, More Than Sport, where it's all about that transcendence.
Yeah.
And
yes, he does.
I know. It's a great organization. Bob, thank you so much for your time today. Where can people learn more about the Challenged Athletes Foundation?
ChallengedAthletes.org. And obviously, if we're sending out 2,000 grants, we want to send out 3,000 grants. So people can go online there and donate anytime and any amount. I always talk about, we built this charity that's raised $80 million, $1 at a time. We are small sports with a big heart. Running, triathlon. We're not gigantic sports, but think about how much money has been raised for charity through these sports. So it's at challengeathletes.org. People can go to babbittville.com, BABBITTVILLE.com, and the radio shows are there, the breakfast shows are there.
I will say, you should really check out the old competitor radio interviews, man. Those are just epic.
There's some great ones there.
On there are just epic. So, Bob, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And
anytime.
To all of you out there, hope you had a good time walking and running along with us. Sorry for a little wind in there, but that's part of the
adventure.
Part
baby.
of the adventure. I mean, it's not an adventure like Big Macs and a Coke during an Ironman, but
close.
But close. It's just about. So, thanks to all of you who've joined us. Hope to join you on another walk or run soon. Every mile matters. Well, thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate it. Hi, everybody. It's Gene again. Thanks for tuning in and walking or running with me and Bob. We hope that you are as inspired by him as we are. If so, subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. We appreciate your encouragement and feedback. If you've got any questions for us, ask them in the reviews and we'll strive to answer them in future episodes. Tell your friends about the podcast and about Charity Miles so we can all make a bigger impact together. And of course, check out our next episode where I walk along a beach in Malibu, California with fitness expert and all-around great human being, Jillian Michaels. Thanks again, everybody. Every mile matters.